Good morning. I'm in my outdoor office for this edition of Coffee with the Preacher. I've got my second cup here with me. Hope that your Wednesday is off to a good start. So we now are into the season of Lent, and I think I mentioned this last week that these Wednesdays during the season of Lent, I'm going to take this time to look at how Jesus actually atoned for our sins. We talk about Jesus' death as atoning for our sins. We say that he died for our sins, and so how does that work? What does it mean to say that Jesus died for our sins or that he atoned for our sins? And it's actually not that straightforward an answer, and it's been one of the more controversial topics in Christian thought, well, ever since the crucifixion. So I'm just going to delve into that a little bit over the next several weeks. There have been, depending upon how you break it down, there have been 7, 8, 9 different or even more different theories of the atonement. Again, depending upon how you break it down. I'm going to break down 6 different ways. And I'm going to begin today with what is probably the oldest one. This is the ransom theory, sometimes called the classical theory of atonement. So the ransom theory of atonement, that word actually is in the Bible. The term ransom is there. It's in Matthew and Mark. Yeah, Jesus himself said it. The Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve, and to give his life as a ransom for many. Matthew and Mark both have that as an exact quote from Jesus. That's pretty good authority. In 1 Timothy, Paul says, "For there is one God and one mediator between God and men, the man Jesus Christ, who gave himself as a ransom for all." Then we have numerous uses of the term redeem or redeemer, that all, which, and the idea of redeeming also has ransom overtones. So what does this mean? What does it mean to say that Jesus' death was a ransom? Like I said, this is probably the oldest way of looking at the atonement. And so think about this. In the fall, humanity was corrupted. In the fall, we remember Genesis 3. Adam and Eve eat the fruit. They eat the apple or the pomegranate or the banana, whatever the fruit was. They eat that forbidden fruit, and they're corrupted. And they, ever since then, are in bondage they're in bondage. So if that bondage is to Satan, then Jesus' death is a ransom that frees us. So you watch a crime drama. You watch a crime drama, and there's a kidnapping, and the kidnappers demand a ransom payment. The kidnappers demand a ransom payment. We need to have like $10 million in unmarked bills by such and such time if you ever want to see your daughter again. Or, we've seen crime dramas like that. And so Jesus' death is a ransom paid on our behalf. And that is straightforward as far as it goes. But then when you start pressing it a little bit, you run into trouble. So if Jesus is the ransom payment, who is the payment to? Who's being paid off? probably the normal way of viewing it is that the ransom is paid to Jesus. The ransom is paid to the devil, to Satan, and that in essence it's this: in exchange for the life of Jesus, the Son of God, the devil will turn loose the rest of us. That's normally the way that it's looked at. And of course, the dirty little secret is that Jesus can't keep Jesus in, the devil can't keep Jesus. And so he ends up with neither Jesus nor humanity. That's the way it is a lot of times phrased, but it's hard to but do we really want to be in a position where we are saying that Satan is in such a lofty position that God has to pay him off? And there were actually some church fathers early on that said that the ransom was a ransom paid to God, which has some logical problems as well. So we are in bondage to sin and death, that is clear. But who is the ransom payment made to? Is it paid to Satan, or is it somehow a case where God is paying God? So that is the great weakness of the ransom theory of atonement. There is ransom language that is used in the Bible. It is clear, and it is, this way of looking at the atonement is one of the earliest, probably the earliest. And Jesus himself described his death as being a ransom for many. Perhaps we could look at it this way, that when Jesus said that his death was a ransom, that he wasn't attempting with that to give a careful explanation, but rather he is trying to use a metaphor, that his death is a ransom, and that in that term ransom there's a metaphor. It's not a careful description, but it's metaphor. And with a lot of metaphors, you can only press them too far before they begin to fall apart. So yes, Jesus' death was a ransom. Exactly how, we can't say, and perhaps we can never say, because to get that far would be to push the metaphor too far. But anyway, Jesus' death did atone for our sins. It was a ransom paid for many, as Jesus himself said. I guess this is the drawback of doing this in my outdoor office, all the road noise. So in looking at these theories of the atonement, probably one of the most important things to remember is that none of these theories are fully satisfactory. There are strengths and weaknesses to all of them. But none of them are fully satisfactory. So we could look at the atonement as being something with a lot of different facets. Like a diamond has many different facets to it. Or you could think about a piece of stained glass, that it's not just one piece of stained glass, but it's stained glass artwork, where you might have hundreds of different individual little pieces of glass of different colors. So maybe that's how we can look at atonement. There's not just one, because none of these pressed all the way fully are satisfactory, but all attempt to do the same thing, which is to explain how it is that Jesus Christ, Son of God, died and in his death made us right with God. And the gospel truth is simply that. However we try to explain it, that Jesus Christ, Son of God, died on our behalf and made us right with God and atoned for our sins. And over the next several weeks, we will look at some of the other ways that people have considered the atonement. Among them, satisfaction theory, moral influence, a couple of different flavors of substitutionary atonement, and then on Holy Week itself, I will perhaps breathe a little bit of new life into this ransom classical theory of atonement. But for today, suffice it to say that in his death, Jesus Christ, Son of God, atoned for our sins. And that's some great news.